All right, we're live. All right, everybody, I want to have a special Making Money Mondays edition with my man, Luke DeGrossi. And I just want to say thank you so much, Luke, for coming on. This guy is like one of my favorite social media influencers. I met you actually on Instagram, and I've been following your story. And to me, you're like a huge influencer. You're a commercial real estate agent. But what really got me noticing you was that you're now the co-founder of Pioneer Communities. And I just
Yep.
want to tell everybody a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Tiffany. It's a real pleasure to be on here. So, like Tiffany just alluded to, I am one of the co-founders and managing principals at Pioneer Communities, and we are primarily owners and operators of manufactured housing communities or mobile home parks. So we currently own 2 communities, soon to be 3 Jan 1. Right now, we have about 400 units under management. And I guess a little bit about me. I mean, I got into the space 2 years and some change ago when we launched Pioneer, but I'm sure a lot of your listeners and followers are probably scratching their heads like mobile home parks. What is that? This is Make Money Monday. Why are we talking about trailer parks? So it's and look, I had the same exact reaction. I mean, my background was one in Manhattan multifamily primarily. So that was kind of my bread and butter. I worked on the debt side of the industry at a little company here in New York. It's kind of how I got my feet wet. And then prior to that, I was working for an affordable housing developer in New Jersey. So I came across manufactured housing communities kind of indirectly. I had a colleague of mine when I was working at the debt brokerage who was representing a client. He was refinancing his client's property. And this was kind of a time where banks were putting out anywhere between like 65 to 70% loan to value on a refinance. And that was for like a, bread and butter multifamily building. And this guy went to a bank for his client, and the banks were coming back at around like 82% leverage. And so from the get, like I remember it caught my attention where I was just like, okay, there's clearly something here. Maybe I'm missing it, but I wouldn't, revisit that for months later. And I kind of just put it in the back of my mind, though, is like, all right, I want to learn more about that asset class. And at the same time, I didn't know this then, but at the same time, my now business partner, Nick Hakim, he was also indirectly introduced to the asset class by way of his father, who runs a commercial real estate investment brokerage in Kingston, New York. And he had a client who was listing his park, and he got 8 or 9 offers at ask, above ask. It turned into a bidding war. And so he was kind of like talking to Nick and was like, hey, Nick, you should check this out. Like there might be something here. So Nick and I actually connected right around that time. This was probably 3.5, 4 years ago, whatever it was. We connected on Instagram, kind of like you and I connected, Tiffany. Yeah. So we became friends. We struck up a friendship. We were both very like-minded, entrepreneurial. We knew that we wanted to kind of go out on our own and do our own thing, but we were, pretty scared, I guess. I think fear is usually what holds people back. I think deep down, a lot of people have the inclination to do their own thing, but it's obviously uncomfortable going out on your own. There's a lot to be said about working for somebody else, namely financial security. And so we kind of started talking, and, like I said, we struck up a friendship. We liked one another from the start. And then a couple of years later, so fast forward, 2 years ago now, we left. We left our respective industries and we launched Pioneer Communities.
That's awesome. So, like you said, the power of networking, man. Social media, regular networking. That's awesome. So, I want to circle back. Like mobile home communities, there's such a quirky niche. Most investors, like you said, they tend to overlook that kind of stuff, right? Or they think of it kind of like a negative way. When people think of like, I don't know if you get that impression, but sometimes when you think of like a trailer park, people are like, I don't think so. It's kind of trashy. People get that kind of negative impression. Why do you think that happens?
Yeah, well, so it's a good point, and it's part of the reason why I think I was just so like put off by it. I come from a world, and you do too, and most of your listeners probably do too, where it's like the shinier the building, the taller it is, the more attractive it is, the sexier it is, and so in your mind, you're probably like, well, the better investment it is too. And I've found that those things aren't always synonymous. Just because something aesthetically, looks prettier doesn't necessarily mean that from an investment standpoint, it's the better choice or the more secure way to park your money. And I had to kind of just realign my thinking in a lot of ways. And I love what Sam Zell, who's actually a pioneer in the space, but Sam Zell says when everybody else is going right, look left. And we had to kind of just realign our investment thesis because we were targeting multifamily assets when we first launched Pioneer. We weren't really sure what we wanted to do. But again, we came across these MHCs and we haven't really looked back. So the term trailer park is kind of frowned upon in the industry. It is when you think of a mobile home park, most people will think of like, I don't know. I mean, I guess like 8 Mile, maybe the movie with Eminem, Marshall Mathers, right, where he grew up in a trailer park, or white trash, or trailer trash, or whatever other negative connotations there might be of trailer parks. There's also the show Trailer Park Boys, which kind of puts a comical spin on the entire class. But I think that as a whole, like when you think of a mobile home park, you think of a rundown community with a bunch of decrepit 1970s trailers. You think of crime, you think of drugs,
Right.
you think of just a whole bunch of negative stuff. So and let me just say this, like a lot of those traits are true. There is a lot to be said about some of these stereotypes. And there's a reason why most municipalities actually don't approve the development of new manufactured housing communities because of the stigma. And we are, the way I view what we do, this is not to say that this is exclusively what we do. We look at all types of different opportunities, but on our last two acquisitions, you could kind of sum those up by stating that we are in the business of putting trailer parks out of business and turning those trailer parks into manufactured housing communities. So we do target, everything that you just said, these quirky kind of unconventional assets that have been mismanaged for a lot of years. And a large reason why I think that a lot of this stigma does exist is because the wide majority of these assets are not owned institutionally. It's not like the multifamily space or the self-storage space where you have these enormous REITs and private equity firms. You do have a couple REITs who exclusively play in the MHC space, Sam Zell's Equity Lifestyles being one of them.
Right.
But you don't have it to the extent that you do in other more conventional asset classes. So the issue that arises, and again, this is depending on how you view it, it could be an issue or it could be opportunity, which is how I like to view it. You have a lot of, probably around 75 to 80% of the manufactured housing communities in the US are owned privately. They're owned by what are called mom and pop operators. So typically the story that we run into is that the park was developed by a grandfather or a great grandfather, and then it was passed down to the kids, who then passed it down to their kids. And here you are, present day, a 200 space park that is floating at around 65% occupancy. Income and expense and rent rolls are still being done by hand. There's no management softwares in place. There's no community director. There's no maintenance team.
Right.
There's really no real estate knowledge being applied to the management of the day-to-day operations. And as a result, a lot of these parks tend to fall into a state of disrepair. And I think that's the primary reason why when most of your viewers and your listeners think of mobile home park, they think of a pretty raggedy kind of environment. What you will find, though, is that if you do a bit of digging and you even look at some of the parks we own, these are really nice parks. I mean, these are places where the quality of the homes over the last decade has improved significantly. I mean, I've toured some brand new double wide 3-bed, 2-baths that are absolutely gorgeous. And these are, like $150,000 homes. They're very well designed. They're very well engineered, and they're not, the trailer that a lot of people might have in mind when they think of a mobile home park.
Right. And I love what you guys are doing. I've been watching and how you're kind of changing the community around and getting involved and getting programming for the kids. So that's like really fantastic. I really love it. So you did bring up different asset classes, and you being a commercial real estate agent, I have to lean on you for this. Do you think that MHEs is better than investing in, let's say, the apartment asset class, hotels, or even self-storage?
Well, I want to back up. I'm not a agent or broker. I don't want to misclassify myself that way. I'm not a broker. Even when I was on the brokerage side of the debt industry, I mean, in Manhattan, you're not required to have your brokerage license in order to broker debt, as long as you are working at a firm that is obviously licensed. Right. And I really haven't found the need to get licensed. I mean, nor would I have the time. I started the process a couple of years ago, but once we started acquiring these things, didn't really see the need to dedicate much more time to it. It might be something I'll revisit in the future, but as it stands right now, I don't really have a need for it. Nick is licensed. So anyway, going back to your question though, is it better? I mean, better is such a, there are pros and cons to any asset class that investors want to participate in. I think maybe even 12 months ago, the views on the hospitality industry were a lot different than they are today. And I think that we're starting to see a lot of the volatile characteristics of hospitality. What happens when the entire economy shuts down? What happens when there's travel bans in place? What happens when people are scared to go sleep in a room that's been stayed in by other people because they might catch a virus or the things that are going on now in the world? So I think that the answer to that question can really vary depending on where we look at what we look at historically, and where we think certain asset classes might go in the future. So when you compare manufactured housing communities to more conventional multifamily buildings or hotels or self-storage, I'd say that they're most akin to self-storage. Okay. In the sense that the way they perform, there's almost like an inverse relationship, counter-cyclical, if you will. There's almost a counter-cyclical demand in the same way that self-storage. So I'll give you an example. Self-storage are known to be a recession-proof asset class, primarily because when the economy expands, right, in the way that we've seen, when it expands, people tend to buy more stuff and they need more space to store it. Now, conversely, in a contraction, kind of how we've also seen recently due to COVID, in a contraction, when people are downsizing, they need room to store their stuff. And so there's that counter-cyclical demand with self-storage, which is why so many investors love self-storage. And there's kind of a similar thesis with manufactured housing communities where when the economy is expanding, there are always blue collar workers who need quality, affordable housing. There are landscapers, there are general contractors, there are individuals who maybe own their own business. There might be individuals who are employed by local retailers. Those individuals need quality, affordable housing in times of economic expansion. And then conversely, in times of economic contraction, how we've seen for the last 9 to 10 months since COVID happened, everybody needs affordable housing. Everybody. So we've experienced, I have a lot of colleagues who work in the multifamily space, and a lot of their collections weren't really quite as good and healthy as ours have been over the last 8 or 9 months. So we started to look at that, and then there's a lot to be said. There's other metrics that we could look at, the average expense ratio on a lot of these asset classes varies, but when you're looking at manufactured housing communities versus more conventional multifamily buildings, your expense ratio is going to be significantly lower with mobile home parks. Your turnover rate is also going to be significantly lower, mainly due to the fact that although the word mobile appears in mobile homes are not really that mobile. It requires, anywhere between $5,000 to $8,000 to move a mobile home.
Right.
So a lot of tenants tend to become relatively sticky in the sense that they stay at the mobile home park that they're in for much higher, longer periods of time compared to multifamilies, where the majority of renters who are living in a multifamily building, I mean, you're probably seeing anywhere between 60 to 65% turnover in those buildings. So at any given time in a manufactured housing community, the majority of the tenants that we're working with have been there for a very, very long time.
Right. So do you think the risk to reward is better, like if you're investing in
I do. I do. I mean, there's a reason why we're very, very we're very laser focused on manufactured housing communities. And it's not to say that we won't look at other assets. I mean, we bought some light industrial in Tennessee a couple of months back, and we're still actively buying light industrial. We love light industrial. We'll look at multifamily. We'll look at distressed hospitality. But we also don't want to be a jack of all trades and a master of none. And we've identified manufactured housing communities as being hands down right now, where we are right now in the cycle, as being the best investment out there. And we really haven't looked back since. And another reason for it, I mean, I could go on, but there's a lot of just misconceptions around manufactured housing communities, I think, and primarily a reason why a lot of these deals work is, number one, the upside, like I said, meaning that most of these deals are owned primarily by mom and pop owners or private ownership. There is a lot of upside at a lot of these communities where, when you do have the real estate knowledge and the capital to invest back into the communities, you can actualize a lot of these returns that maybe weren't able to be actualized either due to lack of capital or lack of knowledge, lack of experience. And so as seasoned operators, we can go in day one and implement these systems and processes and really capitalize on some of that mismanagement day one. There's also a lot to be said about the capital markets and the way that a lot of these banks love manufactured housing communities. We just acquired a park in Alabama, and we did the debt with Fannie Mae. Fannie Mae gave us a very high levered loan, and their rate is fixed. It's a 5-year interest only loan. The rate on that loan, which is fixed for 12 years, was around 3.1%.
Wow.
And that's an incredible, that's an incredible mortgage that we were able to secure there. And again, that's not particular to the park we bought. That's simply the appetite that a lot of these lenders have for manufactured housing communities. They've proven themselves time and time over time to just withstand the economic downturns a lot better compared to other asset classes like multifamily or hospitality. There's also, any time that you buy a multifamily building, there's always the risk that another developer is going to come in and build another building, and it's going to be better amenitized than yours, and the rents are going to be lower. What do you do then? You can't do that with manufactured housing communities. You can't build a manufactured housing. You can do it, but it's very rare, the amount that actually get built each year. And actually, what is specific to MHCs, which I've never seen, I don't think it exists in any other asset class, is that there's an increasing demand and there's a decreasing supply. And the reason why is that a lot of these parks are so well located that the majority of them do get redeveloped. Not the majority, but a wide percentage of them do get redeveloped every year. Right. And so what happens is it's improved land. So instead of purchasing vacant land that you need to go in and clear, some developers acquire mobile home parks and they scrape them, so they get rid of all the homes. and then they bring the property up to its best and highest use, which might be a multifamily building or mixed use or hospitality or whatever it is that they want to develop.
That makes sense.
Yeah, and every year, 1% of the entire MHC inventory is repositioned and scraped and redeveloped. So there's literally a decrease in supply every year, which in the commercial real estate space is pretty rare. Because typically you can just develop new assets. You can develop self-storage. You can develop multifamily buildings. You can develop hotels. You can't always develop mobile home parks.
Yeah, I was reading something else. They were like, there was a lot of sanctions, like the communities were like against building more of those too. So it's like you got to get special permission. It's not against the law, but a lot of places are not allowed to build.
Well, it goes back to your first question, right? It's a lot of this not in my backyard kind of sentiment. I think given the stigma that a lot of manufactured housing communities, or better yet, trailer parks have, is that they are ugly, they are eyesores, they are, the breeding ground for a lot of crime and drug use, et cetera. So a lot of people just don't want them in their backyard. So it's very, very difficult, even just like politically, to get the town or the community or the city on board to actually give you permits to build a new mobile home park. Most municipalities will not approve it.
Okay, so let's turn the corner for a second. Are there any tax benefits for the person that owns the mobile home park and also the owner of the actual owner of a mobile home inside the park?
Yep. So this is kind of a more complex question, I guess, but the short answer is yes. Mobile home parks are depreciated over a 15-year schedule versus a 27.5-year schedule for apartment buildings or multifamily buildings. Right. For commercial buildings, it's typically 39 years. So there are certainly a lot of different tax benefits that not only we benefit from, but also our investors benefit from.
Okay. So if you wanted to get started in this niche, what would you do? Like if I was just a beginning investor, what would I do to get started in this?
Sure. So, I guess that would depend on, what your goals are as an investor. If you wanted to invest in an LP vehicle, I would tell you to, find a really reputable owner and operator, somebody who is out there doing the work and who isn't just necessarily, sitting behind a desk and aspiring to create some sort of passive income for the GP in the deal. Because I don't believe in that. I think real estate is meant to be hands-on, and Pioneer, we take a really hands-on approach to all of our investments. When we bought our park in Savannah, which is like 170 units, Nick and we actually moved on site to the park for about 3 months. And we lived, we documented that real well. We lived there for 3 months in the back of an office. We literally went from the closing table in the attorney's office to Lowe's, and we started renovating the back of the office that night. And we were up to like 11:30 renovating, and we lived on that park for 3 months. So, I would, and I'm not saying come invest with us, but I would say find somebody who is doing the work and who is not just trying to kind of sit back and do the minimal amount of work, because these things, they're on the GP side, these are not passive investments. We're on the phone with our community directors all the time. We just made our first full-time hire. We hired our regional manager, who is an absolute rock star. And it's really just a very hands-on process, I would say. So my advice to your listeners or to anybody who wants to get involved in this space is, number one, determine which side you want to get involved in. If you want to be an owner, meaning you want to invest in the GP, the best way to get involved there would be, again, and I'll use us as an example. If you were to find a deal, if you were to find a mobile home park, something off market, and you're interested in it, but maybe you don't really know how to buy it or how to manage the thing, you would bring it to an operator, maybe like ourselves. And we like I said, we have a full in-house management team, and we understand the model. You'd bring it to someone like us and be like, hey, I found this really good deal. Do you want to buy it together? And that would be a conversation you could have right on the GP side. If you're a seasoned investor, then you probably wouldn't even be asking the question. But if you're looking to get involved on the LP side, then there's a number of ways that you can get involved passively. For instance, when we acquire parks, we usually raise capital deal by deal. We're not a fund. We typically syndicate our equity deal by deal. And there would be an opportunity for investors to participate in that LP vehicle that we create on our acquisitions and get invested and get involved in that type of way as well.
And I sent you, deal. You remember I sent you like, hey, look, you might want to look at this park, dude.
Yes, I recall. I recall. Yep.
You, like, if you were just somebody like me, or you wanted to, how do we find deals? Like, do you have people that do like bird dogging and stuff like that? But how do we find deals? Like, if I wanted to send you a deal, what would I do?
Yeah, it's a good question. There's a lot of mobile home parks out there, and I've before I got into the space, I mean, I've probably driven by so many in my lifetime, and I just never stopped to like actually even think that, there might have been some sort of investment opportunity there. Because again, I viewed them as trailer parks. So the best way, I mean, honestly, like if somebody were to reach out to me directly, and you can do that at our website, you know what, our website's actually being worked on right now, so you're not going to find my contact info there. But if you were to go to our Instagram, I'm sure most of your followers here have Instagram, and just go to @Pioneer Communities. That's our handle. Mine's just Luke DeGrossi, LUKE DeGrossi, DEGROSSI. And just send us a DM or an email. I mean, I'm happy to kind of walk you through it, but high level, you're looking for opportunities that are larger than 100 units for us. We typically want to be above 100 units. Bigger is better for us. And we just want to be, in a good market. So as long as that market has a healthy population growth, and as long as the value of a stick-built home is not sub 100K, because then it wouldn't make too much sense for us to get into a mobile home park business. If people are buying stick-built homes for sub 100, when they could buy a stick-built home, they probably wouldn't want to buy a mobile home. So I'd say as long as it's a healthy market and there's some size to the park, we would certainly take a look at it. But the best way for people to really get involved would be to source them off market. And we could probably do a 2-hour podcast on that alone. But again, if you want to get involved, we definitely take care of anybody who comes to us either as a broker or a wholesaler or a deal finder. I mean, we've compensated numerous people over the years who've brought us deals, and we're young enough, small enough, flexible enough where we could even get people involved in the deal. So, you bring us a really nice deal. Maybe you don't want to just take a $100,000 fee. Maybe you want to get involved in the deal on the GP side. That's something that we could structure where now, you've got real capital in the deal, and you've got equity in the deal, and you're part of the GP in that deal. So there's a number of ways we can do it, but I would say reach out.
Reach out. That's right. So
yeah,
I'm gonna ask a question. Let's see if we can get an answer as best as we can. How much money are we talking for a mobile home park? Like, is there special banks that provide the financing to this? Like, how much are we talking, like money wise?
Yeah, it's a good question. So on average, the actual cost, and it's due to cap rate compression and a number of other things going on in the market, but the average cost for manufactured housing communities has gone up significantly over the last couple of years alone. I mean, there's individuals who got into the space 10 to 15 years ago who are probably just appalled at some of the prices that these deals are trading for these days. There's individual. I mean, the industry used to be one where you could buy parks and they would trade anywhere between, a 9 to like a 12 cap. Today, it's definitely a lot more institutionalized in the sense that there's parks that trade at 4 caps. There's parks that trade at 3.5 caps. So there's different ways I can answer that. I mean, I would answer it, I guess most of your listeners understand cap rate valuation. So I think you're looking at anywhere between a 6 to a 7% cap rate for most of these. Again, the ones that we look at and the ones that we want to be involved in. Some of the more institutional level assets could, again, like I said, trade between 3 and 4 caps as well. I've seen it. And the way that makes sense is actually going to tie right into your second question, is that if you can get agency financing on some of these acquisitions, like I said, Fannie and Freddie love MHCs, and they have a significant amount of capital that they're looking to put out into that space. And it is not unheard of to secure a sub 3% rate on some of these acquisitions. So Fannie and Freddie do have a very specific criteria to types of deals that they look at. We didn't really get into it here, but there's park-owned homes and there's tenant-owned homes.
Right.
The tenant-owned homes are obviously owned by the tenants, and the park-owned homes are owned by the park.
Right.
So it's kind of like a condo versus apartment rental situation, if you want to think of it that way.
Right.
Fannie and Freddie prefer tenant-owned home models. Not to say they won't look at a small percentage of park-owned homes, but it needs to primarily be tenant-owned homes. The infrastructure also needs to be at a certain level. The utilities typically need to be on city water, city sewer. Not to say they won't look at private utilities, but in order to really get that competitive debt from Fannie and Freddie, there's certain boxes that you need to check. But look, even if you were to go to a local bank, most of these banks are not going to be anywhere above a 4% rate. I mean, especially today in this low interest rate market that we're in. So the debt is really what makes the deal in a lot of these situations. And there's other opportunities that might not be fit for conventional financing, where a lot of these private owners, some of them don't have good records. Some of them don't have copies of their income and expense or their rent roll, or just a number of different documents that any lender is going to need. And so in situations like that, let's say you have a park that's like 50% occupied, collections are awful, the homes are older, but you think you might be able to renovate them. In that type of situation, instead of going to a lender and paying, 5-6% on your rate, what a lot of people do in this industry, given, again, the fact that a lot of these assets are not by any means institutional, is they'll structure something called a seller carryback loan. And we've done it once before, where essentially the seller of the property acts as the bank for all intents and purposes.
Right.
And you put up the asset as collateral on the loan, and the seller holds the note. So you're paying the down payment, if you will, to the seller. They get that at closing. They'd pay a capital gains tax on that. But the remainder of the principal and the interest is paid off, over, call it like a 5-year term. And so it works really well because it allows you to buy a mismanaged asset that maybe a lender wouldn't feel comfortable putting debt on. It allows you to go through with the transaction. And then it's also good for the seller because the seller is now creating passive income for himself post-closing. So he'll have, 5-year term, 7-year term, whatever it is. He'll have monthly income coming in, 100% passive, in the form of principal and interest, or just interest if it's an interest-only loan. And then it would amortize, over 25, 30 years, whatever it is. And you'd pay it off after that 5 or 7-year term. So the game plan usually in acquiring assets that are not conventionally financeable would be put a seller carry on it, or seller financing, whatever you want to call it. And then once you've stabilized the asset in year 3 and year 4 and year 5, you refinance conventionally. So you go back to like the Fannie Freddies of the world and you're like, hey, I know you didn't like it 5 years ago, but now I've stabilized it. All these park-owned homes have been converted to tenant-owned homes. The roads have been paved. We're on city utilities. Like, you want to take another look at this. Then you'd pay off your seller carry, and then you would basically just refinance conventionally. So just a creative way that we've gotten deals done.
Yeah, that's cool. I never thought about using creative finance to buy to do something like that. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's certain scenarios where, again, we have to do that simply because the asset might not be financeable in its current state.
Right. So obviously you need to do a lot of research if you want to go down this path, because, there's things like environmental waste, like you said, water supply, if it's city water supply or whatever type of water, and specialized knowledge. Do you recommend like someone that's thinking about going into either multifamily homes or anything like a mobile home community asset, do you think that they should try this, or do you think this is more for like serious investors?
I mean, this, like I said, is a very hands-on industry. It's not for everybody. I mean, there's a lot of eccentricities, I would say, that are specific to the space. So although there is carryover from the multifamily side, there are a lot of different aspects to this industry that are very specific and particular to MHCs. So, I mean, look, if you're starting small with, 20, 25, 30 units and you want to kind of get your feet wet, I think you'd probably be fine. But the biggest issue is always on the management side. So how are you managing your property, and do you own the homes or do your tenants own the homes? Because that's going to make a huge difference in terms of what type of operating expenses you're looking at. So the best way, honestly, I love podcasts. I love reading. There's a plethora of podcasts out there that cover mobile home park investing. I would say just dive into that, reach out to us. I'm happy to chat and just kind of point people in the right direction. I'm always happy to do that.
Okay. So that's actually all the questions I have, guys, for my friend Luke, my favorite Instagram influencer. Great. I mean, man, he's outstanding, guys. And he's doing a lot in the mobile home space with affordable housing. It's phenomenal. So if you can, follow him on Instagram. That's the handle for Pioneer Communities. You can also reach out to him. And what was your Instagram handle?
It's just at Luke DeGrossi. I'll put it in the chat here, but that's it right there.
Let's go here. Let me copy that and put up.
Yeah, feel free to reach out.
Feel free to reach out to him. Oh, wrong one. Hold on. Sorry. I didn't copy. Copy. Stand up. Here we go. Boom. And we're gonna do this. And that's Luke's Instagram handle. If you have any questions for him, please reach out. And like you said, if you have deals, if you want to be a part of this and you don't want to be hands-on, there's different ways to get involved. And he's here, trying to get it done, guys. So if you want to reach out to him, please do that. And I thank you again for coming on and educating everybody on mobile home parks. It's such a different, quirky asset class, and I think it's phenomenal what you guys are doing. And I want to. That's why I said, if I see any of them, I'm sending it to you. Like, hey, I got this for you. Look at this.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Because we have a few here, but it's not big. So again, I think
it's not your conventional investment strategy, and definitely not your conventional asset class, but part of the reason we love it. So thank you so much, Tiffanie. I really appreciate you putting this together.
Thank you. Have a great day.
You too.
Bye-bye.